The rain fell in sheets across Lakeview Cemetery, turning the manicured grass into a mirror of grey sky. Choi Hyun-seok stood motionless before his daughter's headstone, water streaming down his face. Though whether from the storm or his own grief, he couldn't tell anymore. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with the fourth death threat in 3 days. His second-in-command had narrowly survived an assassination attempt last night. Half his clan council had declared him unfit to lead, and his uncle was hours away from calling a formal vote to remove him from power. All because he'd chosen to save lives with his daughter's organs. Then he heard them, soft voices, young and gentle, speaking words that shouldn't exist in this place. "Thank you for saving my sister." Hyun-seok's head snapped up. Through the curtain of rain he saw them, 2 identical girls, no more than 10 years old, kneeling on the wet grass beside Jia's grave. Dark brown skin glistening with rainwater, matching pink raincoats, their small hands clasped together. One girl held something against her chest, a hospital bracelet, faded but preserved. Behind them stood a woman, tall and dignified despite the storm, her hand resting protectively on both girls' shoulders. "We promised we'd come say thank you to the girl who gave Zara her kidney." The world tilted. Hyun-seok's knees hit the mud. His empire was burning because of his choice. And here was the reason why it had been worth it. 8 months earlier, the decision that would shatter everything came not in a moment of clarity, but in the suffocating silence of a hospital room. Choi Hyun-seok had built an empire on absolute control. At 35, he commanded the most powerful Korean organized crime network on the West Coast. From Seattle's waterfront to the Canadian border, his word was law. His legitimate business, Choi Premium Auto Group, the largest luxury car dealership network in Washington state, generated millions in clean money. His illegitimate operations generated far more. The Choi clan controlled shipping routes, import licenses, construction contracts, and enough political influence to make or break careers. Hyun-seok had consolidated power that his father and grandfather had spent decades building, eliminating rivals, negotiating truces, maintaining the delicate balance between the Korean families in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Vancouver. He was the youngest man ever to lead the Choi clan, ruthless when necessary, strategic always, untouchable. But the beeping machines in Seattle Children's Hospital didn't care about his power. Jia had been sick for 2 years. A rare kidney disease the doctors said had no cure, only management. She was 8 years old, small for her age, with her mother's delicate features and his stubborn will. Even weak and exhausted from dialysis, she'd smile when he entered the room, pretending the tubes and monitors didn't frighten her. Her mother, Hyun-seok's late wife, had died in childbirth. Jia was all he had, all that mattered. When her heart stopped at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in February, the medical team worked for 47 minutes before the lead doctor finally looked at him with exhausted, grief-stricken eyes. "I'm sorry." 2 words that meant his world had ended. The next hours blurred. Paperwork, condolences from hospital staff who looked at him with pity he couldn't bear. And then, a quiet woman in scrubs, a transplant coordinator appearing at his side. "Mr. Choi, I know this is an impossible time," she said gently, "but your daughter's organs are healthy. She could save lives, multiple lives, children who are waiting, just like she was." In Korean tradition, especially in families like his, the body was sacred. Ancestors were honored whole. Organ donation was seen as desecration, a violation of the spiritual journey after death. The elders believed that the dead needed their bodies intact to enter the afterlife properly. His father would have been horrified. The clan council would call it betrayal. But Hyun-seok looked at his daughter's still face, so peaceful now, and thought, she was kind. She loved helping people. She cried when she saw homeless families on the street and made him promise to give them money. If her death had to mean something, let it mean life for someone else. "Yes," he said. "Take whatever can help." The coordinator's eyes widened slightly. She'd clearly expected refusal. "Are you certain? There's no pressure?" "I'm certain." His voice was iron. "Save whoever you can." 3 hours later, Jia's kidneys, liver, heart valves, and corneas were harvested and rushed to waiting recipients across the Pacific Northwest. Hyun-seok told no one. Not his second-in-command, Min-jun. Not the clan council. Not even his younger brother, Dae-jung, who'd flown in from Los Angeles for the funeral. He buried his daughter with full traditional honors, incense, white mourning clothes, a Buddhist monk chanting sutras. The entire organization turned out to pay respects, and he kept the secret locked inside his chest, where it sat like a stone. For 6 months, everything seemed stable. Then his uncle, the eldest living Choi, keeper of family traditions, discovered a hospital record during a routine background check on a business associate. The document mentioned Jia's name, organ donor. The confrontation happened in the private room of a downtown restaurant Hyun Seok owned. 7 clan elders sat in a semicircle, their faces ranging from shock to barely concealed rage. His uncle, Choi Sang-min, 73 years old and terrifying in his quiet fury, spoke first. "You desecrated your daughter's body." Hyun Seok met his eyes without flinching. "I gave her death meaning." "You violated centuries of tradition." Another elder, Mr. Park, slammed his hand on the table. "The ancestors will not accept her spirit. You've condemned her to wander lost between worlds." "She was my daughter," Hyun Seok interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. "Not theirs, not yours, mine." Sang-min's expression hardened. "You are not just a father. You are the head of this family. Your choices affect all of us. This weakness, this sentiment, proves you are unfit to lead." "Weakness?" Hyun Seok stood slowly, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "I made a choice no father should have to make. I watched my child die, and in her last moments on this earth, I decided she would save lives instead of rotting in the ground. If you call that weakness, then you understand nothing about strength." Mr. Park leaned forward. 4 children received your daughter's organs. 4 strangers now carry pieces of a Choi. Do you understand what you've done? You've scattered our bloodline to people we cannot control, cannot protect, cannot even track. What if our enemies discover this? What if they target these recipients to hurt us? Or worse, as another elder added, what if these recipients' families come looking for gratitude, for money, for connection to our power? Hyun Seok hadn't considered that. The thought settled cold in his stomach. Sang-min saw his hesitation and pressed. "You acted alone. You broke tradition alone. You will face the consequences alone. I am calling for a formal council vote in 2 weeks. The clan will decide if you remain fit to lead." "Let them vote," Hyun Seok said flatly. "Anyone who wants my position is welcome to try taking it." But as he walked out, his brother Dae-jung followed, pulling him aside in the parking lot. "Hyung, you don't understand what you've started," Dae-jung said urgently. "Sang-min has been talking to the younger families. They're already positioning for power. Your second cousin, Jin-woo, he's been meeting with the LA families. They see this as proof you're compromised." "I'm not compromised. I made a choice. A choice that costs you." Dae-jung gripped his arm. "The Southern California families are already withholding their monthly tributes. They're saying if you can't honor tradition, they won't honor their agreements with you. That's $3 million a month you're losing." $3 million. The number hit like a physical blow. "The Vancouver group is watching," Dae-jung continued. "If you lose the vote, they'll move on our territory within days. And Jin-woo has been promising the elders he'll restore tradition, restore honor. He's building a coalition." Hyun Seok felt the ground shifting beneath him. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that Min-jun posted extra security around you last night. Jin-woo's people have been asking questions about your schedule, your routes. He's not just coming for your position, Hyung. He's coming for your life." The words hung in the cold air. "I won't apologize for saving children's lives with Jia's organs," Hyun Seok said finally. "I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm telling you to prepare for war. Because that's what this is now." Hyun Seok drove home that night in silence, his mind calculating odds, assessing loyalties, preparing for the fight ahead. He'd made his choice. He'd do it again. But the cost was becoming devastatingly clear. His empire, his wealth, possibly his life, all because he'd chosen compassion over tradition. 2 weeks later, on the 8-month anniversary of Jia's death, he drove to Lakeview Cemetery alone. No bodyguards. They might report his location to Jin-woo's people. No staff. Just him and the crushing weight of everything he was about to lose. He knelt before her headstone, rain beginning to fall. Tomorrow was the council vote. Min-jun estimated he had 4 votes for sure, 3 against, 2 undecided. If he lost even one of the undecided elders, he'd be removed from power, stripped of everything he'd built, maybe killed within a week. "I'm sorry," he whispered in Korean. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry the choice I made is destroying everything. But I can't regret it, I can't. That's when he heard the voices, young, soft, speaking English with the earnestness only children possess. Thank you for saving my sister. And Hyun-seok's entire world shifted on its axis. Hyun-seok remained on his knees in the mud, rain pouring down, staring at the two girls who knelt opposite him across his daughter's grave. They were identical, same round faces, same dark brown eyes, same carefully braided hair beneath their pink raincoat hoods. But even in shock, he could see the subtle differences. One girl was slightly thinner, her movements more careful, protected. The other radiated energy, even in stillness, her hand never leaving her sister's shoulder. The woman behind them, their mother obviously, stepped forward slightly. She was striking in a way that had nothing to do with beauty and everything to do with presence. Tall, maybe 5'8", with rich mahogany skin and dark hair straightened and pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore scrubs under a long coat, a nurse maybe, or medical technician. Her brown eyes assessed him with the same calculation he'd seen in adversaries across negotiation tables. She knew who he was. Had to. You didn't grow up in Seattle without recognizing the Choi family name. But she didn't look afraid. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her voice carrying despite the rain. "We didn't mean to intrude on your time. The girls insisted on coming today. It's the anniversary." Hyun-seok couldn't speak. His throat had closed. The thinner girl, Zara they'd called her, held up the hospital bracelet. "This is from when I got my new kidney," she said, her voice small but steady. "The doctors said a little girl named Gia gave it to me. They said she died, but her family wanted to help other kids who were sick. You're her daddy," the other girl added more boldly. "We saw your picture in an article about car dealerships. Mama said we should write you a letter to say thank you, but we wanted to come say it in person." Their mother's hand tightened on both girls' shoulders, a warning to be respectful perhaps, or an instinct to protect them from a man whose reputation was built on violence. "Girls," she said firmly, "let's give Mr. Choi some privacy." "No." The word came out hoarse. Hyun-seok forced himself to his feet, mud staining his expensive slacks. He didn't care. "Please stay." He looked at Zara, really looked at her, healthy color in her cheeks, bright eyes, moving with the ease of a child who wasn't in pain. His daughter's kidney was inside this girl. Gia was keeping her alive right now, this very moment. "How?" He had to stop, clear his throat. "How long were you sick?" Zara glanced at her mother, who nodded slightly. 2 years, Zara said softly. "I was on dialysis forever. It was really scary. The doctors said I needed a kidney, but the waiting list was really long. Then in February they called and said they found a match. February, the night Gia died. Mama stayed with me the whole time during surgery," Zara continued. "And Arya stayed in the waiting room and wouldn't leave, even when the nurses said she should go home." Arya, the protective twin, lifted her chin. "I wasn't going to leave my sister." Something cracked in Hyun-seok's chest. Gia used to say that about her stuffed animals. "I'm not going to leave them alone, Appa. They need me." "The surgery worked," their mother said quietly, and now there was emotion in her voice, carefully controlled but present. "Zara's been healthy for 8 months now, the kidney, your daughter's kidney. It's functioning perfectly. She has her life back." Hyun-seok nodded slowly, not trusting himself to speak. "We wanted to thank you," Arya said, "and thank Gia. So we brought flowers." She gestured to the white lilies now resting against the headstone, already soaking in the rain. "White means purity," Zara added shyly. "The internet said Korean people like white flowers for remembering people who died. They'd researched Korean funeral customs. These children, these strangers, had honored his daughter in a way his own family couldn't." "Thank you," Hyun-seok managed. His voice sounded wrecked. "For coming. For remembering her." The mother's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Choi, what you did, what your family did, gave my daughter her life back. There aren't words for that kind of gift. We'll never forget her, never." She shepherded the girls back gently. "Come on, babies, let's let Mr. Choi have some time with his daughter." As they turned to leave, Hyun-seok heard himself say, "Wait." They paused. "Your names," he said. "I'd like to know your names." The mother hesitated, clearly weighing the wisdom of giving personal information to a man like him. But something in his face must have convinced her. "I'm Imani Harrison," she said finally. "This is Zara." She touched the quieter twin's head, and Arya. "Imani," Hyun-seok repeated. It meant faith in Swahili. Appropriate for a woman who'd held on to hope while her daughter fought for life. "Thank you," he said again. "For raising daughters who know how to be grateful, it's rare." Imani's eyes held his for a long moment. Then she nodded once, turned, and led her girls away through the rain. Hyun-seok stood alone at his daughter's grave, watching them disappear into the mist. And for the first time since GR died, he felt something other than crushing grief. He felt purpose. Hyun-seok returned to his penthouse that evening to find Min-jun waiting with two pieces of news, neither good. "The council vote is scheduled for tomorrow at noon," his second-in-command said without preamble. "Sang-min moved it up. He has the votes to remove you." Hyun-seok poured whiskey with steady hands, though his world was crumbling. "How many?" "5 confirmed against you. Your brother secured 2 votes in your favor. That leaves 2 undecided, and they're being pressured hard by Jinwoo, his cousin, the traditionalist who'd been circling like a shark since the organ donation was revealed." "What's the second piece of news?" Min-jun's expression darkened. "Someone's been investigating the transplant recipients. Professional work. They've identified all 4 people who received GR's organs, including a 10-year-old girl named Zara Harrison." The name hit Hyun-seok like a fist, the quiet twin who'd knelt at GR's grave with gratitude in her eyes. "Who's investigating?" "Private investigator named Marcus Webb. We traced the payment back to a Darius Crawford, the biological father of the Harrison twins. But there's more." Min-jun pulled out his phone, showing a series of photographs. "Webb's been surveilling the family, but he's not working alone. These were taken outside Crawford's motel room." The photo showed Crawford shaking hands with a man Hyun-seok recognized immediately, Park Si-jun, Jinwoo's chief enforcer. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Jinwoo found the recipients first," Hyun-seok said slowly. "He sent Park to Crawford. Looks like it. Crawford's a deadbeat with a criminal record who abandoned his kids 10 years ago, but now he's being paid to cause problems. The question is, what Jinwoo wants him to do." Hyun-seok's mind raced through the possibilities, each worse than the last. "He's weaponizing my compassion. If Crawford goes to the media claiming I'm stalking his children, trying to control them because one has GR's kidney, it makes me look unstable, obsessive, exactly the kind of leader who shouldn't be in power." "Or," Min-jun added grimly, "if something happens to the girl, if she gets hurt while in Crawford's care, the elders will say you brought danger to innocent people with your decision. Either way, Jinwoo wins." The whiskey glass cracked in Hyun-seok's hand. He didn't notice the blood. "That child has my daughter's kidney," he said quietly, dangerously. "She's alive because GR died. If Jinwoo thinks he can use her as a pawn, he already is." Min-jun pulled up another photo, this one showing Crawford and Park Si-jun outside Leshi Elementary School, watching children leave for the day. "This was taken this afternoon. They're not just gathering information anymore, they're planning something." Hyun-seok's phone buzzed. A text from his brother. "Vote moved to 6 a.m. tomorrow. Jinwoo pushing for immediate action, says you're too compromised to wait. I'm sorry, Hyung, I tried." 6 hours, he had 6 hours before he lost everything. And Jinwoo was positioning to hurt the Harrison family, either to discredit him before the vote, or to demonstrate his weakness after it. "Options?" Hyun-seok said flatly. Min-jun knew him well enough to understand what he was really asking. "You can focus on the vote. Call in every favor, make deals, maybe flip one of the undecided elders. Forget about the Harrison family, they're not your responsibility, and protecting them makes you look weaker. Or you handle the immediate threat. Get Crawford and Park away from those kids. But that means spending the next 6 hours on protection instead of politics. You'd be walking into the vote with no strategy, no coalition. You'd lose for certain." The choice crystallized with brutal clarity. Save his empire, or save the child who carried his daughter's kidney. Hyun-seok looked out at Seattle's nighttime sprawl, the city he'd controlled for a decade. Somewhere out there, Imani Harrison was working her night shift at the hospital, unaware that her daughters were being targeted by men who saw them as nothing more than leverage in a power play. Zara and Arya, 10 years old, sleeping peacefully in their modest house in the central district, one of them alive because GR had saved her. Both of them in danger because Hyun Seok had dared to show compassion. "Get me everything on Crawford's location," he said, "and find out where Jinwoo is keeping Park Se-jun tonight." Minjun's eyes widened. "Boss, if you go after Jinwoo's people 6 hours before the vote, I'll be proving exactly what they're accusing me of, putting personal feelings over clan interests, acting like a father instead of a leader." Hyun Seok's smile was cold. "I know. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything when GR died." He grabbed his coat. "What I do now determines what her legacy means, and I won't let it mean that innocent children get hurt because powerful men play games." Minjun stood silent for a moment, then nodded. "I'll get the information. But Hyun Seok—" He used his boss's given name, something he rarely did. "Jinwoo will kill you if you lose tomorrow. Not immediately, but within a month you'll be dead. He can't afford to let you live as a deposed leader. Then I'd better make sure these next 6 hours count." The information came within 30 minutes. Crawford was staying at a cheap motel near the airport. Park Se-jun was in a hotel downtown, one Hyun Seok owned, ironically enough. They'd meet tomorrow morning early to make their move on the Harrison house while Imani was at work, and the girls were alone with their elderly neighbor. The plan was simple and vicious. Crawford would arrive claiming parental rights. When Mrs. Chen tried to protect the girls, Park's men would intervene, not violently enough to draw police attention, but enough to create chaos. Cameras would capture everything. By the time Imani got home, her daughters would be traumatized. Crawford would be playing the concerned father, and the media would have a story about the Choi clan leader stalking and terrorizing an innocent black family. Jinwoo would present it to the council as proof of Hyun Seok's instability. The vote would be unanimous, unless Hyun Seok stopped it tonight. He made 3 calls. First, to his most trusted security team, not the ones loyal to the clan, but the ones loyal to him personally. "I need you to relocate a family tonight, quietly, no questions." Second, to a contact at Child Protective Services he'd helped years ago. "I need an emergency protective order filed against Darius Crawford. I'll send you the documentation of his criminal record and abandonment. It needs to be active by morning." Third, to Dae-jung in Los Angeles. "I need you to do something that might make you clan head by tomorrow afternoon." "What are you planning?" his brother asked warily. "I'm going to make sure Jinwoo understands that some lines don't get crossed, even if it costs me everything. Hyung, take care of Minjun if this goes wrong. He's loyal. The organization will need that." He hung up before Dae-jung could argue. Then Choi Hyun Seok went to war, not for his empire, for a 10-year-old girl who carried his daughter's kidney, for the principle that compassion couldn't be weaponized, for the belief that some things mattered more than power, even if believing that destroyed him. The meeting with Park Se-jun happened at 2 a.m. in a parking garage. Hyun Seok no longer controlled. Jinwoo had already claimed it, along with 3 other properties, in anticipation of tomorrow's vote. Park arrived with 2 bodyguards. Hyun Seok came alone. "Bold," Park said, smirking. "Or stupid. Jinwoo said you'd lost your edge, but I didn't believe him until now." "Where's Crawford?" "Sleeping. We're meeting him at 5 to brief him on tomorrow's plan." Park lit a cigarette, deliberately casual. "Though, I suppose that doesn't matter now. You can't stop what's coming." "I can stop you from using children as weapons," Park laughed. "That's exactly what Jinwoo said you'd say. Still playing the noble protector, even when your empire is burning. Those kids aren't yours, Choi. They're not even Korean, they're just leverage. And by noon tomorrow, when you're removed from power, Jinwoo will make sure everyone knows you threw everything away for strangers." "I'm offering you a deal," Hyun Seok said quietly. "I don't make deals with dead men. Your sister lives in Vancouver. She has 2 children, ages 7 and 9. She works at a bakery on Robson Street. Her husband drives a delivery truck." Hyun Seok's voice was conversational. "I'm guessing Jinwoo never told you that I know exactly where she is." Park's expression went cold. "You threatening my family?" "I'm explaining consequences. You come after the Harrison family. My people in Vancouver receive instructions. Your sister never knows why. But Child Protective Services starts asking questions about her immigration status, her husband's employment records. Nothing violent, nothing obvious. Just the kind of bureaucratic nightmare that destroys lives slowly." "You're bluffing." Hyun Seok pulled out his phone, showed a photo taken 3 hours ago. Park's sister closing the bakery, his nephews waiting outside. Park's jaw clenched. Or, Hyun-seok continued, you tell Jin-woo that Crawford got cold feet, had a change of heart, decided his daughters were better off without him after all. You explain that the Harrison situation is too risky, too public, and you walk away. Jin-woo will know I'm lying. Jin-woo will accept it because he's already won. Tomorrow's vote goes through whether you terrorize children or not. The difference is whether your sister spends the next year fighting deportation proceedings. Park studied him for a long moment. You really would do this? Threaten innocence to protect other innocents? The difference, Hyun-seok said coldly, is that I'm protecting children from being weaponized. You're weaponizing them. Don't confuse the two. Park crushed his cigarette under his heel. This won't save you. You know that, right? Even if I walk away, even if Crawford disappears, Jin-woo still wins tomorrow. I know. You're giving up everything for kids you met once. I'm honoring my daughter's legacy. That's worth more than everything I'm losing. Park shook his head slowly, almost admiringly. You really are a fool. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, your daughter would probably be proud, even if the rest of your family isn't. After Park left, Hyun-seok sat in his car for 15 minutes, letting the reality sink in. He'd just guaranteed his removal tomorrow. By threatening Park, he'd crossed a line, using clan resources for personal vendettas. Exactly what Jin-woo would accuse him of in the vote, but the Harrison family would be safe. At 3 a.m. he called Min-jun. I need you to execute Protocol Phoenix. Silence on the other end. Protocol Phoenix was the nuclear option, a complete transfer of Hyun-seok's personal assets to offshore accounts, liquidation of properties, severing all financial ties to the clan before they could seize everything. Boss, if you do that, there's no coming back. The clan will consider it theft. They'll hunt me. I know, but they can't seize what they can't find. Hyun-seok's voice was steady. Execute it now. By the time the vote happens, I want every dollar I personally own beyond their reach. Where are you going to go? Good question. Once removed from power, he'd be a target. Jin-woo would have to kill him to consolidate control. Couldn't risk a deposed leader building a rival faction. I'll figure it out. Just make sure the transfer is clean. This is insane. This is necessary. Hyun-seok started the car. One more thing. I need you to set up a trust fund. Beneficiary is Zara Harrison. Medical expenses, education, housing, whatever she needs for the rest of her life. Anonymous donor. The mother can never know it came from me. How much? Hyun-seok did quick math. His personal fortune, separate from clan holdings, was roughly $47 million. Protocol Phoenix would preserve most of it, but he'd need resources to disappear, to survive whatever came next. 20 million, he said. Put 20 million in the trust. Min-jun's breath caught. That's half your... She has my daughter's kidney. She gets half my fortune. Set it up to release in installments, structured to look like insurance or foundation grants. Make it bulletproof. After hanging up, Hyun-seok drove to the Harrison house one last time. He didn't stop, didn't get out, just drove slowly past, watching the dark windows where two little girls slept safely, unaware of the war that had been fought around them tonight. Zara, alive because GR died, protected because Hyun-seok chose compassion over empire. It was 4 a.m. when he returned to his penthouse. In 2 hours, the council would convene. By noon, he'd be stripped of power. By evening, he'd probably be running for his life. He poured whiskey he wouldn't drink and stood at the windows watching Seattle's lights for what might be the last time as its underworld king. His phone buzzed. A text from Dae-jung. I couldn't flip the votes. I'm sorry. Jin-woo has them locked. But I've made arrangements. There's a plane waiting at Boeing Field. When the vote concludes, you have 30 minutes to disappear before his people move. Use it. Hyun-seok typed back, Thank you, little brother. Take care of yourself. Another text, this time from Min-jun. Protocol Phoenix executed. Assets secured. Trust fund established. First installment hits next month as Children's Organ Donation Foundation grant. She'll never know. Boss, it's been an honor. Hyun-seok closed his eyes. $47 million reduced to 27. An empire reduced to nothing. A decade of power ending at dawn. All because he donated his daughter's organs and refused to let that choice be weaponized against innocent people. The elders would call it weakness. Jin Woo would call it proof of his unfitness to lead. But when Hyun Seok thought about Zara's shy smile at Jia's grave, about Arya's fierce protectiveness, about Imani's exhausted strength, when he thought about his daughter's kidney keeping that child alive and healthy, he knew he'd made the right choice. Even if it cost him everything. At 5:45 a.m. he dressed in his best suit. Not for the council, they didn't deserve his respect. For himself. For the man he'd chosen to become when his daughter died. The man who believed some things mattered more than power. The vote would happen in 15 minutes. And Choi Hyun-seok walked toward his execution with his head held high. The vote was unanimous. 7-0. Even the two elders Dae-jung thought might support Hyun-seok had folded under pressure. Choi Hyun-seok was formally removed as head of the clan at 6:47 a.m. By 7:15 a.m., Jin Woo had assumed leadership. By 7:30 a.m., Hyun-seok was in his car, driving toward Boeing Field with nothing but a duffel bag and the clothes on his back. Min Jun's text came through as he merged onto I-5. Jin Woo's people are already moving. Bounty went out 10 minutes ago. You're worth 5 million dead. Get on that plane now. Hyun-seok didn't speed, didn't panic. Just drove with the same controlled precision he'd used to run an empire. That empire was gone now. 10 years of work. Billions in assets. Power that stretched from Seattle to Vancouver. All gone because he'd chosen to protect two children from being used as pawns. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But something made him. This is Imani Harrison. Her voice was tense, uncertain. I just received a very strange call from my bank. They're saying a foundation deposited money into Zara's medical fund. A lot of money. They said it came from the Children's Organ Donation Foundation. But when I called them, they said they don't have any record of... She paused. Did you do this? Hyun-seok's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The first installment. $20 million divided into structured payments that would look like legitimate grants and scholarships. Ms. Harrison, the amount they deposited is enough to cover Zara's medical care for the next 5 years, plus her sister's education, plus... Her voice cracked. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because my daughter saved your daughter's life, Hyun-seok said simply, and I needed to make sure that sacrifice meant something. This is too much. We can't accept... It's already done. The foundation is anonymous, irrevocable. Even if you tried to refuse it, the money would still be there. It's structured to release in installments tied to Zara's medical needs and the girl's education. Silence on the other end, then quietly. What did this cost you? Perceptive woman. Everything, Hyun-seok said honestly. But it was worth it. Where are you going? Away. There are people who want me dead now. I made choices that put me on the wrong side of powerful men. I need to disappear for a while. Because you protected my daughters. Because I refused to let them be used as weapons. Yes. Another long silence. Mr. Choi, Imani said finally, I don't know what kind of man you are in your world, but in mine, a man who gives up everything to protect children he barely knows is a good man. Whatever happens to you, I hope you find peace. Take care of them, Hyun-seok said. Zara and Arya. They're special. They deserve everything you're giving them. I will. And Mr. Choi, thank you. For my daughter's life. For caring when you didn't have to. She hung up. Hyun-seok drove in silence for the next 10 minutes, processing. He'd lost his empire, lost his family's respect, lost his position, his power, his legacy. But Zara Harrison would have medical care for life, would go to college, would thrive, because Jia had saved her, and because Hyun-seok had refused to let that gift be tainted. The plane was waiting at Boeing Field, just as Dae-jung had promised. A private jet, fueled and ready, pilot asking no questions. Where to, sir? Hyun-seok considered. He had $27 million scattered across untraceable accounts, false identities prepared, contacts in a dozen countries. He could disappear completely, start over, build something new, away from the clan, away from the life that had just destroyed him. Tokyo, he said finally. I have business there. The pilot nodded and began pre-flight. As the plane taxied down the runway, Hyun-seok looked out the window at Seattle disappearing below him, the city he'd controlled, the life he'd lost. His phone buzzed one last time. A message from a number he didn't recognize, but the words made it clear who'd sent it. The girls made me promise to tell you thank you again. They said to tell you that GR must have been very special, just like her father. Imani. Below the text was a photo. Zara and Arya holding a hand-drawn card, crayon letters spelled out. Thank you for protecting us. We'll never forget GR. Hyun-seok stared at the image until the plane reached cruising altitude. Then, for the first time since GR died, he cried. Not from grief, not from loss, but from the overwhelming knowledge that his daughter's death had meant something, had saved a life, had created a ripple that would continue long after he was gone. Somewhere below, Zara Harrison was alive and healthy, would grow up, would have opportunities, would carry GR's kidney and GR's gift into a future Hyun-seok wouldn't see. That was legacy enough. 3 months later, Min-jun sent an encrypted message. Jin-woo, consolidated power. Clan is stable. Your brother is safe. Jin-woo needs his LA connections. Bounty still active, but focus has shifted. You're yesterday's threat. New problems for him now. The Harrison family is thriving. Second installment from the foundation hit last month. Zara's checkup came back perfect. Kidney functioning normally. The mother enrolled in a nursing program. Apparently, the financial stability let her reduce hours and go back to school. You did good, boss. Whatever else happened, you did good. Hyun-seok read the message from a cafe in Kyoto, where he'd been living under a false name, consulting for legitimate businesses, building a new life from the ashes of the old. He'd lost everything, but he'd saved what mattered. And in the end, that was the only victory that counted. 2 years later. From a cafe in Kyoto, Hyun-seok opened an email from Min-jun. No names, no direct references. Just information. The young one graduated top of her class. Full scholarship to University of Washington. Pre-med. The foundation grant covered everything the scholarship didn't. The quiet one's latest kidney function test. Perfect. No rejection, no complications. Doctor said it's one of the most successful transplants he's ever seen. The mother finished her nursing degree. Works at Children's Hospital now. Ironic, right? She helps other families navigate what she went through. They're thriving because of what you did. Hyun-seok stared at the words, then at the photo attached. Arya and Zara, 17 now, standing outside their high school. Arya's arm around her sister, both smiling, healthy, whole. Zara still wore a small hospital bracelet on her wrist, the one she'd held at GR's grave. He'd lost everything to protect them, his empire, his family, his name. But they were alive, safe, building futures they'd never have had if Jin-woo had used them as weapons. GR's kidney still beat strong in Zara's body, still giving life, still proving that compassion could survive even in the darkest places. Hyun-seok closed his laptop and walked out into Kyoto's evening streets, a man with no empire but infinite purpose. Some legacies were built on power, others on sacrifice. His daughter had taught him which one mattered, and he'd chosen correctly, even if it cost him everything. Especially because it cost him everything. That was what made it worth it. The end.